to a Hope 1032 podcast.
Hello, welcome to Season 5 of Raising Teens. I'm your host, Collett Smart. I'm a psychologist, a teacher, and also a parent in the middle of raising my own teen and young adult children. I started this podcast because I know that many teens are struggling, and I wanted to create an online village of support for parents. I'm joined again this season by well-known experts on teen mental health and well-being. I have such hope for this generation of young people, so each episode is jam-packed with support so that you can get on with the job that you do best. That is, connecting with and loving your teen. Davide Di Pietro is an accredited mental health social worker with postgraduate qualifications in psychology and social work. He has experience working in both private practice and the non-government sector since 2010. As the director of the Family Counselling Clinic at the Resilience Centre, Davide leads a team of qualified and highly experienced mental health professionals who specialise in working with adults, young people and families, specifically in relation to parental separation. This episode is meant to help you on your journey. I understand that separation is difficult for many people, and I acknowledge that there are many complex issues that result in separation. If it is realistic in your situation, I want to encourage a healthy, child-focused approach in your co-parenting. If this is unrealistic for you, I would like to recommend that you seek individual or co-parent counselling or mediation for your specific situation. Hi, Davide. Thank you so much for joining me on Raising Teens.
Of course. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Davide, please tell us a little bit about your work with families. I've been following your work for a while, but my listeners might not know what you do. So tell us a little bit about what you do in your week.
That's nice to hear. Look, I'm an accredited mental health social worker, and I work at the Family Counselling Clinic at the Resilience Centre. So what can I say? I guess I get the honour of working alongside some pretty remarkable and highly skilled therapists at the Family Counselling Clinic and the Resilience Centre. And we work with families, we work with parents, young people, and even extended families, helping them through the adjustment that comes with parental separation.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the work that you do. So, Davide, in my work over the years, when I've worked with families and teenagers in particular who are in families who are going through a separation, I kind of see two areas that they struggle with. One is practical and one is emotional, just really broadly. So the practical things that I've seen over the years are when the teenagers arrive at school, when I was a school psychologist, and they didn't have books because books were at dad's house and they've been at mum's house for the last few days. Yes. Then others would be emotional. So the feeling torn between two parents, or the mourning that happens, or, sometimes parents playing one off against the other. What do you see most commonly as challenges for teens whose parents have separated in your practice?
Collett, I think you're spot on. I think both the practical things are a challenge, and I also know that the emotional side of things can be a challenge as well. But it's the first time that I'm saying it here, but I feel like a broken record every time that I say it, because I feel like I have to say that parental separation is a difficult change and adjustment for everybody within a family system. Yeah. And I think it can be tricky in a lot of ways to navigate that well. There's also some potentially amazing opportunities for family members and for relationships following parents' decision to separate.
Okay.
So even though it's tricky for everyone, you would know this, really, really well, is that being a teenager comes with its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
And so when you throw a big family adjustment, like a structure change into that, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I think about what's going on from a normal developmental viewpoint for teenagers, and what's happening for teenagers is that developing that sense of identity, and they're exploring their own independence. So part of this means that they're comparing themselves to their parents, to their siblings, to others, and they're starting to figure out how they might be different, how they might see things differently to mum or to dad or to others. And so that's seen as quite healthy if they're able to say, hey, I'm different to you. This is where I end and you begin.
Yeah.
But of course, that means that there's butting heads and there's pushing boundaries sometimes. And what's also really normal for teenagers is that family often takes a bit of a backseat and friends are more in the spotlight.
This is a complex situation in a time when your teen's brain and body are still changing. If you would like to understand more about the developmental changes, you can listen to Season 5, Episode 1 on the teenage brain.
So whilst we know that children and teenagers adjust to parental separation, what's really well documented is that they cannot adjust when there's ongoing conflict between parents. Teenagers are able to do something as well at that point in their development that they haven't been able to do before that, and that's to see things from two different sides. So younger children are more black and white in their thinking, whilst teenagers are able to appreciate that one parent might be saying one thing and the other parent might be saying another thing, and that both of those things might be true in some way.
Okay.
Teenagers are at greater risk of playing detective. They become really attuned to dishonesty.
Okay.
And a problem here is that they can lose respect for the parent whose behavior they interpret as being dishonest.
And so I love your parentship model. I'm looking at that in front of me. It's literally, for my listeners, it's literally a ship that has been developed by Davide. Talk us through what you mean by the parentship theory.
Oh, gosh. This is, look, part of the work that we've been doing, and I think one of the things that we are doing that no one else is doing is working with separated families in a way that promotes the cooperative parenting relationship. And the parentship model is just a very exciting new model that we've been developing and playing with. A couple separate, and for them, that means the end of the relationship. When parents separate, it means the birth of the parentship. So I've got it written down here because when I define it, I want to make sure that it's really clear. The term parentship is a connection, association, or involvement between adults that is based on working collaboratively and respectfully in making decisions that best support the psychological, emotional, social, and physical well-being and development of their child. It's a mouthful, but that's what it is. So the theory is a model that we've developed at the Family Counselling Clinic, and it's especially for working with separated parents to assist them in their venture to cooperatively parent after separation.
Davide's parentship model is a play on the word relationship. The parentship has 3 sails, being calibrate towards a shared purpose, managing interactional patterns, and nurturing the parent-child relationship.
You did a great job at kind of describing the image, and the parentship theory is essentially 3 interwoven factors that draw from findings in the literature on the features that are believed to contribute to a sound co-parenting relationship. So the model is something that we're using in therapy because we believe that it holds really great promise for prospective therapeutic interventions for parents and for children.
And so then when you say co-parenting, what does a sound co-parenting relationship look like in a separated family?
Well, the theory will talk about how parents that are able to parent well after separation are particularly good at doing a few things. So one thing that the literature recognizes is that parents are able to calibrate towards a shared purpose. So that is that they're able to rally together for the sake of their children, despite harboring any hostile or negative feelings towards one another.
Okay.
The second thing that they're able to do is that they're able to manage their interactional patterns. So because low interpersonal conflict increases the chance of achieving high-level co-parenting, the parents that are able to proactively manage how they communicate, how they conflict, so communicate well and conflict well, that actually increases the emotional security for children.
I find it fascinating there. You didn't say no conflict. You said conflict well. What does that look like?
Yes. Well, conflict is a part of being alive, being human, being in relationships, being connected. And we're all connected. And so conflict is just one part of that. And it's actually really interesting to know that when parents are able to have conflict and to resolve the conflict, that actually increases emotional security for children. It teaches them a whole lot of skills as well as to how to have disagreements, how to resolve them, how to negotiate, skills that they'll need for the rest of their life. Lastly, the third factor of the parentship is that parents are able to nurture the parent-child relationship. So in this factor, parents explore how to maintain a quality relationship with their child, and they understand how to help the young person through the adjustment of family change.
And so what would nurture look like potentially?
Well, nurture is about being highly involved, highly invested, showing up to school events, showing up to sports games, making sure that there's a balance in the division of duties between the parents so that the parent is actively involved in the work parts of a child's life, the rest parts of a child's life, and also the play parts of a child's life. It's being able to communicate with them in a way that promotes relationships within the family instead of doing things like putting other family members down. And the other element is about, having that parental protectiveness and warmth. So being able to show children that they're safe and that they can come to you and talk to you as a parent.
And so when you nurture your children, and you mentioned showing up at sporting events and so on, those events are really aimed at being there for the child and not being about parental conflict. I think that's the main focus that I hear you saying.
It's about who's on the pitch, not who's on the sideline.
What can parents do when they see teens struggling with the changes that happen through a separation?
That's a great thing to talk about. When I hear young people or parents, extended family members talk about their experience of separation and divorce, I hear about change and loss, about that adjustment. And I feel like when I'm able to acknowledge that parental separation is a place where the process of grief is happening, then I'm able to inject compassion and patience into the equation. And when I see parents and ex-partners doing that, I see them open up. I see them drop their weapons and their shields. And I see young people feel heard, like someone actually gets it.
When parents separate, this can be a period of grief for teens. It's so important for young people to have role models and stable attachments in their lives. During a time when their personal life may feel a bit unstable, having another adult mentor or a grandparent to spend time with is so important. It can be tempting to get your new partner or a friend to step into the role of mentor. But for a mentoring relationship to work, there needs to be safety, comfort, and willingness on the part of your teen too.
Because when we support people who we know are grieving,
Yes.
we listen to them, we sit with them, we reflect with them, we empathize with them.
Yeah.
Yet when we are talking about or dealing with separation issues, we often take sides, we blame,
Yeah.
we position ourselves on a viewpoint, and we become advice givers. So it's a really different thing. When parents are talking to teenagers, it's often about helping them to find a way to acknowledge the change, empathize with the loss, and support the adjustment. My brain thinks in pictures, and whilst I can't draw it for you, I think I'm pretty sure I could describe it to you. What I'm seeing is that there is a planet of parental separation, and orbiting around that planet are 3 different moons. So we've got the moon of change, and we've got the moon of loss, and we've got the moon of adjustment. And so I think about, how do we tackle all of those moons? How do we acknowledge that change? How do we empathize with the loss? And how do we support that adjustment?
Okay,
I
beautiful.
don't know if that makes sense.
That's
but that's
beautiful. And so, Davide, I'm thinking, I have teachers and school principals who listen to this podcast. What can we do in schools to support the teenagers first, but then obviously they sit within a family? How do we support families? What do you advise schools to do from a compassionate point of view for teenagers going through separation?
Look, it's a big deal, because when change comes up for us, it's usually associated with bad or discomfort or some other negative state.
Yeah.
So when we think about change from that separation perspective, from a child's point of view, we might realize, okay, so the changes that they're struggling or dealing with are things like a change in time arrangements that they spend with each parent, or a change in the attention that they're able to get from either parent. Maybe one parent has primarily been at home prior to separation and now is working. And so the level of involvement that parent has might be different. The practical things that you were talking about before, the living arrangements. Children, teenagers are getting used to living in 2 different households. And so with that comes different rules, and it's remembering to pack things and to bring books, and what do I need for homework and what do I need for the assignment. So there's a whole lot of those practical things that come with it as well.
And so schools being aware of that and almost having a policy where children can come to their teachers and principals and say, yeah, I've gone through a week where I'm forgetting my stuff. And we actually have to, I think, as schools, let some of those rules go a little bit, not giving the kids detention because they haven't brought their books. There's a lot of reason behind what's going on for those kids rather than just, I was lazy and I didn't check my timetable kind of thing.
That's right. You're not going to give a detention for grief.
If your child ends up with a detention because their hat or their homework was left at the other parent's house, this is not a sign of you failing as a parent. Reach out to the head of your child's grade, perhaps. Asking for help early is not an acknowledgement of failure. It's an acknowledgement that things have changed. Talk to the school about your child needing some support. When we say nothing, the school won't know where to support your child or when to extend grace when needed. And so when you see families in your practice, and you have one parent perhaps who doesn't want to be involved in counseling or working together, or you have one parent who buys the child all sorts of belongings and designer handbags for that matter, doesn't have bedtime routines or tech boundaries, and the other one does. Yeah. How do you support parents? I'm thinking I'm going to have parents listening who are in this situation. How do you support parents who are struggling with feeling like the bad cop to their child?
Wow. You're just hitting them today. Good question. Let me tell you, this is what I what I think is really important to know, and what I'm taking from is some of the research that's been done on building resilience for children. There's lots of factors that we know contribute to resilience in children, and one of those factors is what's known as the parent factor. Now, it's referring to a particular model that we work with here at the Resilience Centre. That's the Resilience Donut model.
Yes, that's Lynn Worsley's amazing model.
That's right. So she acknowledges that the parent factor is a really important part of building resilience in children, and just one of many. But in that factor, it talks about how children need a 50-50 balance. So they need the love, they need the care, they need the affection from a parent, but they also need the rules and the discipline and the boundaries.
Absolutely.
And that they only need that from one parent. So often what happens when parents separate is that there's this polarization. One parent seems to be the one that does all of the rules and the discipline and the routines and getting things in order. And then often the other parent is described to me as, the term that I hear quite a lot is a Disneyland parent. So all the fun and the games and just freedom.
Yeah.
And that's actually really unhelpful for kids, because then they don't have one parent that's able to provide them with that balanced parent factor. Then they have two parents that are polarized against one another. My advice here would be positive change starts with one parent, and really we should be aiming for that 50-50 balance.
Okay. So the parent who's listening, their aim is to be the 50-50 parent, even if they see the other parent possibly not doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. What do you recommend for adults in a child's life, a teenager's life, when there is a parent who is either completely emotionally absent or physically absent, as in they don't see a parent altogether?
It can be really difficult when that type of dynamic occurs, and it can be for lots of different reasons. There are many reasons why a child might choose not to spend time with a parent. And what I have learned through working with families over many years now is that it's so not simple, and that there are so many different perspectives to consider and to take in. Often the voice of the child is so important to bring into the conversation, and hearing out the child, their viewpoint, but also knowing that some of the dynamics that can occur within a family is that there is this tendency to form alliances, or for children to feel the need to protect a particular parent. And all of those types of dynamics can actually contribute to a child's decision not to spend time with a parent.
And then how do we support a child whose parent is choosing not to spend time with them? There's a lot of grief that goes with that.
Absolutely. That's a really difficult thing to see come into the room, because often what children will report is that sense of abandonment. And really, again, it's about taking that grief perspective, and it's about leaning into that. It's about creating that space where you can empathize with that loss and acknowledge what's going on and help them through it bit by bit, support just one step at a time.
Okay. And so finally, Davide, what is your hope for teens and their families during the separation process and then after separation?
That's a question that I would often ask families as I speak with them. I hear lots of the same things. I hear that everybody can get along, that mum and dad can stop fighting, that we can actually turn these changes into opportunities, and that we can acknowledge that though it's different moving forward, it doesn't have to mean that it's bad or worse.
Davide's parentship model gives us a great way of thinking about the changing dynamic of a partnership, but with the children being the focus. If you would like to know more about Davide's work, you can find him at the Family Counselling Clinic at the Resilience Centre at theresiliencecenter.com.au. You can also find me or leave a question for a future episode via email or my Facebook page or via raisingteens.au. Or you can go to the Hope 1032 podcast page. Please subscribe and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd love to see you next episode. And in the meantime, keep parenting with your teen's future adult in mind.
This episode was hosted by Collett Smart, edited and produced by Alec Green, imaging by Lucy Weil, and social media by Beth Rivers.
Hope 1032. Thanks for listening.